Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into your story and your history. It's wonderful. And to begin that process, I want to cover one of the more tumultuous things we've all lived through, which was the pandemic. And
Mhm.
4 years ago, it was raging. We were trying to figure out how we were going to get through it. How did you ultimately get through it? And how did it change the way that you do things now?
Yeah, the pandemic was a massive changing thing in my life. I was running a business at that time, had like 20 odd staff, working in the digital marketing industry, helping fitness studios grow. Had a pretty big business, and when COVID hit, the business was affected because of COVID. But also, I was going through my own internal challenges for probably 6 months before that, where I was struggling with anxiety and depression and feeling burnt out and exhausted from the business. And COVID was an opportunity then to make some changes in terms of the business and also my life in terms of the direction that I wanted to go in. So I made some big decisions, made some big changes, and decided to exit that business and didn't really have a plan, didn't really know what I was going to do next. And yeah, decided to start working with different coaches and therapists and started meditating and decided to go down a different path. And now I'm doing a new business and I sold everything that I had in England after COVID and now I live in Peru. So yeah, lots of change.
Absolutely. So, are you hopeful for humanity? I mean, it was quite a shift for everybody. Are you hopeful for where we're going as a people?
Um, yeah, overall, yeah, I feel like there's a collective awakening, a collective consciousness where people are actually, I don't think there's been a time in history where people are working on themselves as much as what's happening right now. Obviously, if you watch the news all day or you listen to the news, maybe you wouldn't have that perspective. But I do believe that there's a lot of things happening that are good, that are positive, and I feel like maybe there's going to be some difficult times ahead. But in the long run, I feel like there's hope for the collective all over the world, yeah.
So, on this new lease on life you have, if I was to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What would your answer
Mm.
be?
Answer would be I help people to develop deeper levels of self-awareness and to manage and reduce the amount of stress that they face.
That seems like something we all need. We just get buried by living on this planet with all these distractions, you know?
Of course, yeah, totally.
So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream? What did you want to grow up and become?
Didn't have many plans at that age, to be honest, but it was more probably being a footballer, as that was my dad was a footballer, and that's what I grew up with in England, and that was probably the one at that time in my life. Yeah, that was interesting. In.
So, take me back to your childhood and what were these foundational seeds that helped you tap into spirituality and help people get to a deeper awareness of themselves? How did all this get cultivated and harvested in you?
I don't think it really was cultivated and harvested at that age. I didn't grow up in a family that was very spiritual. I didn't grow up in a community or a place that was that spiritual. People were pretty disconnected, and I didn't grow up, yeah, with like a role model that I could look at, like a very stable male figure in my life. I didn't grow up with that. Like my mum and my dad broke up when I was 4. I spent time with my dad at the weekends, but it wasn't like I had a very stable upbringing. So that wasn't really the time for me that brought me into spirituality. But there was always a sense where I felt very sensitive to other people's emotions and to my own emotions. And there's always like a deeper like intuition that there was something that I was going to explore as I got older, but I didn't really know what it was. And I had a lot of my own conditioning and programming from my experiences and from my family and from school and from the place that I lived in that I felt was probably, I didn't know at the time, but it was blocking some of those things that where I wanted to explore them. And the time when things changed for me was COVID, which you
So,
mentioned.
so I guess that was kind of my next question. Like, what was the actual flashpoint where you were like, "This is what I need to be doing with my life," and it was during COVID.
No, it was before COVID. It was actually before COVID. So it was before COVID. I'd lived in quite a few different places. I'd lived in Australia, I'd lived in the US for a period of time, and I'd lived in, just before COVID, I was living in Asia in like Thailand and Bali. And I was working from those places remote and building a team. And that was all good. but there was still this like emptiness and this loneliness and this feeling within me that I was ignoring and distracting to just make more money and work more, basically, and travel. And when I felt internally off, I would try and change my external circumstances or situation. For example, I'd end up going to Bali and I'd be like, maybe I didn't feel good or I'm feeling off one day and I'd be like, this isn't the place. I'm going to go to Thailand. Usually, if I was hungover or I'd been on a night out with my friends, I was, I'm going to go to Thailand now. And Thailand would be good for a bit. And then I'd be feeling some kind of emotions and I'd be like, this doesn't feel right. But I'd be blaming the place for how I'm feeling. And then I'd change my external situation to feel different for a period of time. But then the feelings would come again. And then and then I went back to England after being in Asia because the business was growing, and then I went to England to settle down a little bit and try and grow the business from England, based on advice from other people. And then when I was in England, I felt like I moved back in. No, I bought a house, but my parents moved in with me, my stepdad and my mum. And that felt like an opportunity where I had to actually start to work through some of the things that I'd just been ignoring for years, like just distracting myself from or going out drinking or working. And then I felt like I was having like a spiritual awakening. I was working like financially, I was successful in terms of what people, say is successful. I just bought this house. Like I had everything that you would say someone should have to be happy based on what society says are the conditions to be happy. But I felt really like misaligned, empty, numb, sad, miserable. I was suffering with depression. I was suffering with anxiety. I was confused. And I had to run this business at the same time. But then I was having thoughts every day of like, there was suicidal thoughts at times. There was no plan to take action. There was no intention to do anything, but there was thoughts that were coming up. But there's also thoughts of like, this isn't the path that I should be taking. And it was difficult because it was the most money I'd ever earned. I had a lot of people that relied on me, and I put a lot of effort into this business to get it to where it was. And then it was like, oh shit, like I've got to make some big decisions here because something's like telling me that I'm going to keep suffering unless I make some changes. And COVID happened, and that obviously led to me having to make some changes.
Yeah. So, of all these journeys and travels you've been on, what has been one of the most unexpectedly magical places that you stayed at or been to?
Uh, when I was younger, when I was 21, I went to India and traveled to India. And that brought in like a sense within me of like the different energies and spirituality and meditation and yoga. And but I was still at a stage where I was partying and I was drinking, and I wasn't at the stage ready to take on that stuff that much at that point. I felt something different within me than I've ever felt when I was in India at that age. But then I went back to, my normal life, and it was like, well, what do I do now? Like I've got to go and do something that I kind of know that I can do. Like my mind kind of took back over and was like, well, how are you going to make money, or what are you going to do next? Because you've not got any money now after you just spent it all traveling. But that was an amazing experience. That kind of opened me up to spirituality for sure, but it didn't kind of wake me up for very long. And then other places, Thailand is probably one of the places I've been the most. Been a lot of times to Thailand. That got me on the path of like stopping drinking alcohol. Very much into like fitness and yoga in Thailand in certain places. That was some amazing experiences, and that also helped me with work and with like building that business that I ended up exiting. And Peru, where I am now, has been the place where I could feel the most at home outside of England, um, because I've connected with like the culture. My partner's Peruvian. I've got a child here now, and also working with plant medicine. I work with ayahuasca. I run retreats, and ayahuasca and different plants from the Amazon have changed my life in so many ways that I'm so grateful for. And I feel very connected to this land, yeah. And the other place is Australia. I spent 6 years in Australia. I've got a passport. Um, that really helped me to, yeah, live on my own, be away from family, and spend time away and feel homesick, but try and work through some of that. And it also helped me to build some wealth, which at that point in my life was important and is what I needed at that time in my life. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight, yeah, to a few places that have been
Yeah.
important for me.
For sure. So you had mentioned not having a role model or figure growing up, but as you've
Yeah,
gotten older, have you developed an inspirational figure that's kind of fueled you for who you are?
it's a good question. Yeah, there's different people that I've never even met that I feel like have been role models. Like different how would you want to call them, like mystics or sages or people that are very wise in terms of like listening to their stuff and taking a lot from that. So that's been one way, people that I've never even met. There's been other people in my life, like therapists and coaches that I've worked with that have helped me get on the path of really understanding myself more and more, developing more awareness, self-awareness, understanding how to self-regulate, um, understanding my own values and the vision and what I want and how I want to live. And yeah, living by my own values instead of in the past maybe going against them at times, and then obviously having regret and shame and guilt and things like that. And then also those role models have helped me to have more stability in my own life and the direction that I want to be as like as Jake or as a father to my son. Like they've given me more clarity and help in terms of aligning how I want to be living day to day. So I'd say they're the main ones, yeah.
So how do you balance this life of giving a lot of yourself to help people get to a better place and a better awareness of their reality, but you also have to hold back to develop and evolve as a human being? How do you balance all of that? What is that motivation every day to do this work?
The motivation to do it, to do the work that I do, where I work one to one mainly with mainly like people that are in high pressure positions, maybe the CEOs or entrepreneurs, or they're in the film industry in Hollywood or whatever it is. But usually it's those kind of clients that I work with, and the motivation and the inspiration for me to do it is because I want to try and lessen the amount of suffering that there is in the world. I'm not gonna be able to do that on my own, but that's kind of the thing that's like, can I help towards it? And that's the thing that I want to work on because I've been in difficult positions myself. I've experienced a lot of pain and suffering through clinical depression and anxiety and having those kind of thoughts in the past. And that's a big inspiration and motivation for me because I've been in the positions that these people that I work with are in, and I can see it a lot clearer because I've actually been able to work through it and be on the other side and supporting them now. So yeah, it feels, yeah, I really enjoy the work that I do.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you're dealing obviously with high-powered people, accomplished people. Do you tend to feel that you get as much from them as they do from you, or there's a symbiosis with what you're doing unexpectedly? I mean, you're obviously not going into that, but do you find that in the work that you do that there's this two-way avenue and you're growing into a greater being and creature because you're around these ideas and people that need your help?
Definitely, yeah. I learn a lot from the people that I work with. I get a lot from those experiences. Like I feel like by serving others, then obviously it also has an impact on ourselves in terms of how we feel. Like the more that we are willing to offer and give and serve to people, then usually we get that back in return. Like it's kind of a, what's the word for it? It's kind of a reciprocity. Like it's a process of whatever we give, we get back.
Yeah.
Times in my life where I've felt probably a lot of regret or guilt or shame is when I'm trying to take too much, or I'm trying to take too much from myself, where I've kind of gone off track because of advice from other people. Um, so that's definite, yeah. Like I get a lot from the people that I work with. I'm really careful with the people that I work with as well. I think it's important that the energy's right between the people, like in terms of whenever I speak to someone, it's not like, yeah, I'm just going to work with anyone. It has to be the right fit for both of us. I have to feel a connection with them. I have to feel like I can serve them. And the demographic of people that I mainly work with is males between 30 to 60 is probably the demographic, and they're in usually like high performing positions, the founders, or they're in a high pressure role, or they've got a lot of responsibility, or they're struggling with their personal lives because of the careers that are taking up too much of the time, and they're not feeling very present, or they're lost in the past, or they're in the future too much in the mind. So yeah, there's some of the things that come up.
So what's the best advice you've ever gotten in your life?
Best advice I've ever had in my life. It's a good question.
Yeah.
To be kind, to be gentle, to be compassionate with myself.
Yeah.
Best advice.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run to the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained along the way. What advice would you give that young version of you?
Try lots of different things. Don't worry too much about money and the future and what other people are saying that you should be doing. And go and explore lots of different things, like go and explore different cultures, different countries. Think about the things that you enjoy doing and do more of them. And look at the things that you want from now. Like what do you want now over the next year or the next 2 years, and just focus on that. And the money isn't the most important thing. You know, it's not. It's obviously it's a in this way of living and with costs going up, money is we need money, but don't just focus on the money, is what I would say.
So, yeah, I totally get it. So, of everything that you've done, everything you've seen and accomplished, what are you the proudest of?
I don't really look back on accomplishments anymore and be proud of them. It's an interesting shift that's happened, probably with all the work that I've done. I don't look back on stuff and be like, oh wow, I'm proud of that anymore. The thing that I'm probably the most grateful for, and yeah, probably in terms of the proudest, is the changes that I've made over the last 4 years. Like the courage to make those changes, the courage to make those decisions, the courage to let go of a lot of that financial gain that I was having, the courage to sell everything, the courage to move to a new country, the courage to learn a new language, to live in a new culture, to leave my family behind in the UK, to bring up a child in Peru, which we weren't planning to do. It kind of just happened, and yeah, the courage to just follow my heart and yeah, like see where it takes me without knowing and having faith.
So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
It's a question I ask myself often. It's one of the main spiritual questions, like, who am I? And I try not to identify too much with like, I'm a dad or I'm this or I'm that or I do this job or um, but who am I? I feel like someone that is a seeker that wants to keep learning more about the nature of life, the nature of living on this planet, the nature of death. Um, I want to keep exploring and understanding myself as much as possible to keep developing more self-awareness. Um, and just enjoying the moment as much as I can. Like enjoying now, just trying to live in the present as much as possible and keep noticing when I go to the future or go into the past and try and come back to now.
Right on. If anyone wants to hire you, reach out, learn more about you, any of the good business, where can they go?
Where can you go? To the website to www.awarenesscoaching.co.uk.
Excellent. Jake, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your work. Keep doing the wonderful work, man.
Thanks, mate.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Take care.